morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where, for the first story of the day, we're going to talk about not one, but two genius marketing initiatives from the Hollywood studios. Oh, it's so nice to see them finally get the hang of social media. It really confounded them at first, but they seem to be learning quite quickly now. And I say that because I think both of these ideas are doing great right out of the gate, because I know about them because you tweeted me about them. So they're getting your attention, and you like them enough to want to share. And I like them enough to want to share. So let's share. So the first is from Disney Marvel, and I was tweeted this by Gordon Werner, who said, "Grace, I know you're going to love this." And I do! And that's Marvel's announcement that the entire freaking month of October is going to be hashtag Helaween. Love it. Get the hashtag in there. And that not once a week, but every single day, they're going to release new content from Thor Ragnarok, obviously to promote the movie, which comes out the first weekend of November. Interestingly enough, one of the last weekends in October in many countries overseas. Oh, Marvel, you always do this to us. But it's really a fantastic marketing plan, and they had that beautiful graphic to get you all excited. But it's funny, whenever I tweet anything about, praising Marvel or DC, their movies, the other side always rallies back and is like, they either say, we have this, which is better. Like when I talked about the Justice League emojis this morning, everyone was like, well, what about the Thor Ragnarok emojis? Or they'll be like, they copied something from our side, right? It's like, you can love both. I love both, hence my tweeting about both and dealing with both Marvel and DC fans. Again, you can be both. But somebody, sure enough, when I talked about how smart this was, someone said, Wonder Woman Wednesdays much? Basically saying Marvel ripped off DC. But here's why they kind of didn't. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made, but I think that Marvel saw a missed opportunity, a squandered opportunity, I think is the right way to describe it, from DC, and said, let's do it better. So Wonder Woman Wednesdays didn't have a snappy hashtag. Helaween is nice and short, although they are expanding how many characters you can use apparently. So Wonder Woman Wednesdays was just ahead of its time. And then also the thing is that most people aren't aware of Wonder Woman Wednesdays because they sucked. I love the movie. I think that the ad campaign, though, it's no secret, came together very late. It only really kind of gelled at the very last second. It was, I think maybe because, to be fair, Warner Brothers was holding its breath to see what kind of a situation they had on their hands. They were like, is this like an all hands on deck emergency, or will everyone love the movie? And then when the reviews came out, I think they got a little bit more self-confident in their ad campaign. But Wonder Woman Wednesdays, I think, never, ever, ever released a significant piece of content that got anybody's attention. In fact, I often recall people replying to Wonder Woman Wednesday reveals, that's it. And I think they even actually missed one of the first Wednesdays and didn't release anything. People were like, isn't it Wonder Woman Wednesday? And they were like, please don't bother us. This is harder than it looks. So let's see what kind of content they come out with. Obviously, they're not all going to be winners. That reminds me of the David S. Pumpkin sketch that we talked about on Friday. And it said 100 floors of horror. When you have 100 floors of horror, they're not all going to be winners. When you have to reveal 30 pieces of content, because the first day was just that they're doing this, they can't all be winners. But there should be one or two things that really get people's attention. Enough to continually get people checking for what's happening today for hashtag Helaween. And Hela is a great match with the holiday, which, as we also discussed on Friday, has become one of the a huge generator of money for just anybody who's looking to make a buck. Just like Christmasine. I've combined them into one mega holiday, and they do now run into each other. As soon as Halloween's done, the Christmas merchandise comes out. But anyone looking to make a buck, just like Christmas always makes it a little bit easier, it seems that Halloween does the same thing. So it's very good, and I think that Cate Blanchett does indeed look like she's having fun in her costume. Now, speaking of costumes, that's the other marketing campaign. And this was tweeted to me by Rick Guerrero, who said, hey, look at these Fanta bottles. The labels have figures from Universal Horror, aka Dark Universe. And you know that it's from the movies, the new movies, because Sofia Boutella's Mummy is on one of them. And that's really the only way to tell that's what they're doing. And she looks great. In some ways, I think she looks better here in this illustration than she did in the actual movie. And semi-spoiler for the Mummy, I'm so glad it's not Tom Cruise on the freaking bottle. And it's cute because, each character has the fruit flavor of the beverage they're on incorporated into their character. Psst, it's in the eyes. But again, only the Mummy one looks like anything like the movie character. Now, to be fair, only the Invisible Man has been cast. They haven't cast a Phantom, and they haven't cast a Bride of Frankenstein. It was supposed to be it was rumored to be Angelina Jolie, but that deal hasn't come together yet, and I quite frankly don't think that it will, because so many bad things have happened to her PR-wise since she was brought up as a contender. But I think that they should have at least put the Universal logo on there. They can't, and maybe it's there like on the back somewhere, but like in a big way, to be like, hey, get excited about the upcoming movies. These are movie characters, like for future films, not like the past old films, but you should totally watch those. Those are amazing. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think the reason they don't say Dark Universe, and this is an interesting behind the scenes tidbit, is because remember, Warner Brothers is suing them for the rights to use the term Dark Universe, because Warner Brothers wants to use that for their Justice League Dark movie. So Universal, even though they can't, brand it, and I don't think they should feel too bad if they lose Dark Universe, to be perfectly honest with you. I prefer Universal Horror, to be frank. I would have just stamped that on, just at least have the Universal logo. But I would say, go and watch these older movies. And again, by not having the Universal logo on there and like a modern kind of feel to it, maybe they should have had all 4 figures on each bottle and had Sofia Boutella on each one to really hammer home that this is a new era for these characters. Because I think people will be like, oh yeah, I've kind of heard of these old movies, right? I mean, very few people are unfortunately fans of classic film these days. You totally should be. And I would recommend, if you're looking for something to watch this October as you enjoy Helaween, that's such an effective hashtag, you should watch the original Frankenstein by James Whale and The Bride of Frankenstein. And the Invisible Man movie with Claude Rains is fabulous. Very, very good stuff. Definitely check these movies out. And then you'll be better prepared for when they eventually do come to the big screen. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is about the new Charlie's Angels reboot. Speaking about rebooting things, everything in nothing new ever in Hollywood. They just keep recycling everything, and it's an effective model for the most part. There's new stuff too. We don't want to be pessimistic, right? But not in this episode. Everything is, the Marvel stuff is new. So that's got that going for it, as well as what seems to be a whole bunch of stuff going for it. But anyway, we're talking about Charlie's Angels, the Charlie's Angels reboot. And Elizabeth Banks is directing this movie. And I think that, she was really doing very well. She was like the hottest female director in Hollywood, coming off of Pitch Perfect 2. And good for her for building up her behind-the-scenes career. We talk about Leonardo DiCaprio doing it. We talk about Brad Pitt doing it. And now Elizabeth Banks has been successfully doing it. And she's actually financially, World War Z was a huge hit. But she's very successful. She doesn't get the same awards kind of caliber attention that DiCaprio and Pitt get with their stuff. Although DiCaprio's actually, his producing doesn't get a lot of, Wolf of Wall Street. It depends if they're in it, etc. It's a mixed bag for everybody, except for Elizabeth Banks, who's just solidly in the commercial section. But because Pitch Perfect 2 did so well, she was supposed to direct Pitch Perfect 3, but instead got this Charlie's Angels offer and was like, I want to do that. But I think Patty Jenkins has put her in a difficult position of having to deliver something more than just a good movie. Because Patty Jenkins showed that having a female director on a female-led action movie, blockbuster, would give it a certain level of authenticity, would make it ring true. And so now, and I think to some degree that's what made Pitch Perfect so successful, that it rang true in Pitch Perfect 2 as like these very genuine female stories that could be enjoyed by everyone. Although I don't think as many men enjoy Pitch Perfect 2 as they did Wonder Woman. But anyway, now she has to do the same thing with Charlie's Angels. And so I think she's looking for a little something, looking for that authentic angle. And it's very difficult. She has to be able to match. I don't think it would be difficult to match Patty Jenkins' success, but she has to be on the same scale. She has to be somewhere on the board. She just can't be like ridiculously behind. And of course, the first step is casting. And ironically, Patty Jenkins did not cast her Wonder Woman. That was Zack Snyder. And as some of you have pointed out, Patty Jenkins was nervous about Gal Gadot in the role. But obviously it turned out great. And I think that's probably the best casting that Zack Snyder has ever done. It might be the thing he ends up at the end of the day being the most famous for, although he never gets any credit for it, for having cast Gal Gadot in the role. I know some of you will be like, well, what about all his Watchmen casting? Well, that hasn't really stood the test of time, has it? It's going to be soon an HBO series And so everybody will just associate the characters with those actors. But anyway, here's Elizabeth Banks seeing what she can do with casting. And she doesn't have anyone, it seems, to help her. But I think that her ideas are pretty good. And the one that got everyone's attention on Friday was Kristen Stewart being in talks, for to play one of the Charlie's Angels. And this is also, I think, not only what happened with Wonder Woman and Patty Jenkins. You have a situation where the first Charlie's Angels movies were very cheesecakey. Now, that was kind of owned by the female leads because Drew Barrymore, for instance, was a producer on the films. So it didn't seem like they were being exploited. They were exploiting themselves. Girl power, kind of like a little bit of that was an older version of girl power, and we're in a new incarnation of that, or it's evolved to what it is today. So the new Charlie's Angels needs to reflect that. And so Kristen Stewart is, you might be like, why would anyone want to put Kristen Stewart in a movie after Twilight? Well, if you follow the independent circuit, she's really redefined herself as an actress. And ironically, so has Robert Pattinson, her ex-co-star and ex-boyfriend from her Twilight days. They've both been really committed. Just like the studios didn't give up on social media, Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson. And it's funny, at one point, they were all considered a joke in the area, right? But Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson just kept going, and they're now actually quite respected as actors. Kristen Stewart she's at every movie festival every year, and she's there legitimately. And then Robert Pattinson is actually a major contender for the Best Actor Oscar for his Good Time, his role in Good Time. He's being mentioned very aggressively there, and people saying, he's going to be a surprise contender. So, and I would think he would be a huge surprise if he actually got nominated. Now, why would Kristen Stewart want to be in Charlie's Angels, right? Wouldn't she be like, hey, I saved my Twilight money. I don't need to do this. When she also, and I would say on that note, saved her Snow White money, hopefully. Although Snow White to me is the thing that scares me, because she was pretty good when she was in princess mode, but when she went into warrior mode at the end of the movie and had to make like a big speech to inspire the troops, etc., it was some of the worst acting I ever saw. So I don't know if she's a good choice for this. Her SNL work's pretty good. I don't know. Maybe with a good, strong director like Elizabeth Banks, and if they wrote the role to fit her like a glove, it would be a good idea. But she might want to do it because of the success of Wonder Woman. She might want to get on this, ride these coattails as well. Now, it's also been mentioned that Lupita Nyong'o is being considered for the movie, but she's already in Black Panther in a very similar role. Janelle Monáe was mentioned early days for Charlie's Angels, right after Hidden Figures came out and was a huge box office success, and I think she'd be a better choice. I don't like it when, I don't think it's good for movies or for the talent when they always just play the exact same role just in a whole bunch of different movies. And also, I just think I want to see Janelle Monáe move forward already. Damn it. I don't know why she's not moving forward faster. Perhaps she should get rid of her manager too, just like Gal Gadot just did. So I'm curious, what do you think of, Elizabeth, this Charlie's Angels thing is working on so many levels already. Do you think Elizabeth Banks can follow in Patty Jenkins' footsteps? Do you think Kristen Stewart is a good choice for the movie? And do you think this movie is a good choice for Kristen Stewart? Side note, Robert Pattinson is an Oscar nominee. What do you feel about that? Is that one of the signs of the apocalypse or Ragnarok? And then also, who would you prefer, Lupita Nyong'o or Janelle Monáe? All right, so for the third story of the day, while the Sony hack revealed plans for a Men in Black Jump Street crossover, although Jonah Hill, of course, had said he didn't think that was ever going to happen, it seems that Sony has also come to the same realization, thankfully, and is instead fast-tracking a spin-off Men in Black movie. Now, you might be like, well, if they're going to get two new agents and they're going to focus on two new agents, isn't that just continuing the franchise? I think they're very intentionally using the term spin-off because they don't want to close the door on Will Smith returning once more. So they're like, no, the leads are still Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, and they could come back anytime now. Although Will Smith infamously ruined Men in Black 3 by rewriting his lines on set, which not only made the script and the story a complete mess, but also made the movie prohibitively expensive because they had to do so many reshoots and it just delayed production. Also, he had that, remember the huge thing about Will Smith having too big of a trailer and taking up too much space and it just being a monstrosity on location, right? I don't know why they would want Will Smith back, but sometimes Will Smith delivers at the box office. He's still in the game, and he of course has some big movies coming up. So they're like, let's just hedge our bets. So this is being called a spin-off, and Steven Spielberg will executive produce once again, just as he has with the other films. But what I think is interesting about this is that horror is ultra hot right now. So Sony, if they're smart, and they haven't shown too much evidence of that, but hopefully somebody over there has a good idea. Hopefully they say, well, why don't we get a hot new horror director to make this both funny and scary? Like a Drew Goddard. Why don't we go like Cabin in the Woods? Just really heightened. Although that's what Barry Sonnenfeld was supposed to bring to the first one. But Barry Sonnenfeld was never really scary. Barry Sonnenfeld was more like Tim Burton light, And so I think they could get somebody like a Fede Alvarez. He's already booked, of course, doing the new Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie. But someone like that, I think, would be a really interesting choice. I'd also like to see maybe one of the agents be a woman. But after Ghostbusters, that might have scared Sony off of the idea. And I certainly wouldn't do 2 female agents. But one of them would be nice if you get the right actress. It's hard. It's very, very difficult. But, Gal Gadot worked out. So I think if they just really try, Sony, fast tracking is one thing, but don't rush it to the point that you do a crap job. Although that's like Hollywood's motto. I think it could be great. So I just also hope they don't try and hire any actors to be like Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones replacements. That was, I think, the problem with Independence Day Resurgence. It didn't try to be its own thing. And so hopefully the spin-off terminology and trying not to spook Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones will help reinforce that idea of making this thing its own entity. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on them. And I have a great viewer question from Charles Gilbert. Now, it's a simple question, but I think it's super important. And I think it's, something that we should bring up because I think in some ways we dance around it. But this is like, let's just cut to the heart of the matter. So Charles Gilbert says, greetings, Grace, from South Florida. I hope everything's okay. Charles says, still recovering from the hurricane, but we have power now. And I had to catch up on your great shows. Thanks. I'm so glad. You talk about how, I'm glad that you were catching up on my shows, but also that you're, of course, okay. But Charles says, you talk about how showbiz is roughly 50% creative and 50% business. So how important is it for a filmmaker trying to break into the business to actually be business savvy? And if so, where would someone start since I'm mainly focused on honing my creative skills? Thanks so much, Grace. This is such a fabulous question, Charles. You have helped everybody, I hope, by asking it. It's fabulous. Okay, so yes, if you want to work in Hollywood or even if you want to be a professional artist, if you want to operate on a level where business people are involved, you need to understand, and actually in any industry, if something's an industry, it has a business component to it, and you should understand every aspect of any business that you want to get into. So for Hollywood, you should understand the business of filmmaking, and that's because you want to understand the thought process of the people who will hire you, hopefully. You want to understand what they're looking for from you, what could potentially turn them off about you, and then fix it. You don't want to be frustrated by the process. You don't want to not understand the beast that you're dealing with. So it's very, very important for you to understand that. And also not to take things personally when, they don't seem to go your way or you flat out are rejected, right? Because often it's not personal. Often it's for business reasons. And, a large part of working in any creative business is rejection. So you got to really understand it so that it doesn't demoralize you and, throw you off the rails. You got to be able to keep going. I saw, on a side note, I saw Mark Felt, the movie about, Liam Neeson stars in it. It's about Deep Throat and Watergate. And Mark Felt says in the movie that his father gave him some great advice about his life. And he said, you want to be a vector. You want to have direction and force with your life. And I thought that was great. It really emphasizes not being passive. And so you want to understand the environment that you're in. So yes, you want to know business. I think it's crucial. Now, this is how you can do it. Read the trades every day. You got to read 2 of them. There's not really more than that, but these are the 2 you should read. The Hollywood Reporter, which has become very tabloidy, but they're good with breaking stories, and they'll help you understand the names of the business people that you should know. And then also Deadline, which has deeper analysis, and is sometimes a little bit of a tougher read, but it's important for the same reasons. Then Vanity Fair. I would skim Vanity Fair, just keep an eye on it. They do a lot of celebrity profiles, but they also do a lot of behind-the-scenes exposés about the business, about show business. For instance, I think in the last year, they had a fabulous article about one of the first famous female agents and her rise and fall. And our whole career, basically, I think it was Barbara Streisand, I think that was it, totally relied on Barbara Streisand. And once Barbara Streisand dropped her as her agent, that was the end of this woman's career. Fascinating. So look for articles like that. Then also you want to watch shows and movies about Hollywood. For instance, and make sure you watch good ones, but for instance, FX's recent feud from Ryan Murphy about Bette and Joan on the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. You also want to read biographies of studio executives and talent, directors, actors, producers, basically whatever you're interested in doing. Or, if you have the time, sample, because those will give you examples of how that talent dealt with suits and the highs and lows. Because, you have to be able to navigate it. You have to be able to survive. That's a great word, actually. There's a lot of rejection in Hollywood. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you have to be able to just keep going and keep your head in the, not only keep your head in the game, but stay in the game. And so this will help give you anecdotes. And there's no one way into Hollywood, because it's constantly changing. So that's why you want to read as many people's different experiences as possible to kind of orient yourself. So I hope that's helpful, Charles, not only to you, but everybody watching. Again, great question. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Charles' viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and of course, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.